I'm just eyeing the wee below.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, October 19, 2021. Please stand and join us in Pledge of Allegiance, right by the gentleman in back clothes. You guys want to start us off?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for playback on Comcast Channel 14 and Verizon Channel 31. It's also available live online at wrpsrockland.com/TV and within 24 hours via video on demand at www.youtube.com/WRPSRockland. Please go to wrpsrockland.com for further information. Okay, first on the agenda, community announcements. Open Space Rail Trail Cleanup announcement. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. Just another reminder to the community, the Open Space Committee and Reimagine Rockland is doing their annual town cleanup on Saturday, October 23rd from 9 to 1. That's 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. They're going to meet at Town Hall Plaza for anyone from the public that would like to participate. Meet out in front of Town Hall at 8:30. Everybody will get squared away, know where they're going to go. They're going to send people out to the rail trail, the town forest, Hartsif Park, and other areas around Town Hall. They'll have trash bags available. People should bring their own gloves and baggers. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, review and approval of minutes of October 5th, 2021.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Next on the agenda, new business, alternate fence viewer appointment, James Paul. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. So the previous alternate fence viewer was our veterans agent, Vinnie Fontaine, and Vinnie is obviously no longer working for the town. So the building inspector is looking for you to appoint Jim Paul to be the alternate. And to be honest, I don't even know that they're ever really actually used, but it's good to have somebody available as a backup just in case. And you all know Jim, so there wasn't a need to have him come in.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
You have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Next on the agenda, one-day liquor license, Trinity Episcopal Church, 3 Goddard Avenue. Anybody here from Trinity? Oh, come on down.
Welcome. Yep.
Thank you. I'm Karen Bond. I'm representing Trinity Episcopal Church, the one that's right across the street. This is the 6th time that we've held this fundraising event. It's a wine tasting with food pairings. We present a variety of wines. It's a maximum pour of 1 ounce, so nobody has more than 6 ounces, which is accompanied each ounce by a food course. We try to limit, we are going to be limiting the number of people to 60 this year to accommodate some social distancing. We are recommending vaccinated people only purchase tickets. It's a very important fundraiser for the church. It's a small community, but they do a lot of good in the community, and this is an important fundraiser for them. So we appreciate your approving this in the past for us, and we after 1 year of a layoff due to COVID last year, we're happy to put it back on again this year.
Okay, anybody have any questions or concerns from the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the one-day liquor license.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
Enjoy. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Karen, best of luck.
We'll have tickets on sale for anybody who wants them.
She must know us. Next on the agenda, transfer of ownership, BMW South Shore Mini, Volvo Cars South Shore, 1040 Hingham Street. Anybody here from that?
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Steve Beasley. I'm the Vice President for Group 1 Automotive. And we, like you mentioned, are requesting transfer of ownership for these 3 dealerships here. and anticipate ownership in kind of the middle of November. Is what our goal would be.
Okay.
I don't know what you may need from me.
Anybody have any questions or comments, concerns?
Nope.
So one question I do have, obviously, there's, it seems like there's 4 dealerships up there. Is the one that's closed, is this part of this license transfer?
The one that's closed is the former Hyundai dealership. Is that the
Yeah.
one you're referring to? Prime Automotive had begun plans and permits for remodeling that location to be a Land Rover dealership, and so that would be part of future plans, not immediate.
But it's not
plans.
part of this right now?
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding of that.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns, comments?
Nope.
Okay.
All the paperwork's good.
Seeing none, the paperwork is in order. I'll entertain a motion to...
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor?
Excellent.
It's unanimous.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, best of luck.
Best
Appreciate
wishes out there.
Okay, next on the agenda, Fire Department Response Time Study Presentation. Dr. Charles Jennings, Manitou Incorporated, and Chief Scott Deppie.
Scott,
Gentlemen,
welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Wow. Good evening, board. Thank you for having us for this presentation. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Charles Jennings of Manitou Incorporated out of New York. Dr. Jennings is a public safety consultant that we hired to do this study for us, looking at response times for potential fire station locations, and as well as fire department efficiency, personnel deployment, and some others which he will get into.
Just looking at potential recommendations for improvements and...
Correct, exactly. You know, we don't, or at least I don't have anything to hide with the fire department, so I was very happy to have Dr. Jennings come in to, you know, perform the study and, you know, help us make improvements, you know, we needed.
Just tap it. Okay. Good evening, members of the Select Board and Pac-12 and others in attendance. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm going to give you a brief report and entertain any questions you may have on the study for the fire department. Just to reiterate, as Chief Duffy said, you know, we had complete cooperation during the study, and the records were brought over, I think, faster than any other study we've done. We usually give a pretty exhaustive list of requests, and they usually trickle in over the course of about a month or 6 weeks, and which is a nice orderly workflow. And I got everything in about 3 days, and it was like my inbox was full, and so I was catching up for a while on all the reading. But it's been a great study. So just very briefly, a little bit of background on the firm and myself. I'm the principal and co-founder of the firm. We specialize in public safety and planning. I lead that part of the firm. I have a PhD. I'm a fellow of the Institution of Fire Engineers and a designated Chief Fire Officer. I've consulted independently since 1991. I do research and consulting. I'm a co-editor of the International City Management Association's textbook, Fire and Emergency Services. I'm an alternate to the High-Rise Building Safety Advisory Committee for the National Fire Protection Association. I'm on the faculty at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, and I've served as a firefighter, fire officer, and public safety commissioner. The firm Manitou was formed in 1999. This is actually, as I was sitting in the lobby, I realized it's our 10th study in Massachusetts because we did 2 studies in Andover. But we've worked in 22 states, 3 Canadian provinces, and we have recognized expertise in deployment analysis, community risk, strategic planning. And we've worked for everything from one-station volunteer departments to Houston, Texas, and Broward County, Florida, and places like that. So this study that we were engaged to do really had 2 distinct parts. One was related to station location planning, in particular the decisions you're making here around renovating or replacing your existing headquarters and the possibility of a second station. And so we looked at those 3 alternatives of retaining or replacing the headquarters, the need for a north side station, and a possible station in the Market Street corridor. The second piece of the study evaluates the administrative organization and function within the fire department. And there's a laundry list of things on there which I won't go through, but basically everything that feeds into the first part of the study, but also looking, as the chief indicated, at kind of a high-level management review of the department. So a number of findings I think that we have just to start us off, and first of all, by everything we've identified, the fire department is doing a good job in delivering services. The one thing that struck us and is apparent, I think, is that they have a limited staff. And the personnel that they do have are very effectively utilized in delivering service. That means they're very busy answering calls for service. And that's a good thing, but sometimes too much of a good thing can have some impacts. The day staff, that is the chief, the deputy chief, and the day officer, who's the fire prevention inspector, in addition to their administrative duties, I think it's important to remember that they play an important operational role in keeping the fire department able to function on a day-to-day basis. And so they routinely get engaged in responding to emergencies above and beyond their kind of normal administrative duties. And so that's an important thing to bear in mind for them. The administration, and they have the administrative assistant. That administrative organization in the department is very effective, and the administrative support, a lot of the administrative support is taken up by on-shift personnel who perform these tasks as additional duties. And again, that's a good thing. You're getting more value out of those personnel. It shows their commitment and engagement. And so the whole department really, whether you're on shift or on day work, they're all really working together cohesively to make things happen, which is good. The department recently acquired a new records software system, which is an excellent system. Whenever you buy those systems, there's some period of time in which you have to transfer existing records over to that new software to get the full bang for the buck, and the department's in the process of doing that. And we make some specific recommendations in that area. Several years ago, the department went to, of course, now I'm blanking. Thank you. Holbrook Regional Emergency Communications, which is really great from a fiscal standpoint, but also from a service delivery standpoint. And their director was just recognized this year as the Communication Center Director of the Year by the Professional Society for those people. And so they're really delivering a high quality of service for communications, which you could not match doing it on your own. So that was great. The paramedic staffing model, in that the department takes on personnel who are trained as paramedics. It ensures a good provision of patient care, and we saw evidence of that. As we were here visiting, and a real positive culture in the department toward a delivery of EMS in addition to fire and rescue and the other services. The department relies extensively on recall staffing on a more than daily basis. That is, they are calling people in from home to come in and either provide backup at the station or to respond to the scene of incidents. And that's taking place well more than once a day. And so we think that's an area of concern concern. It's a good thing that they have that capability, but they really are kind of what you see is not necessarily what you get, because there's a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes that are coming in to make things happen. The department does have a good automatic aid program with surrounding communities to provide really necessary support on the initial response for reported structure fires. And this is a small group, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go through, and I'll certainly pause at the end. And that is not legible, but that's the organization chart for the department. There's names there. As you'll see, as you're probably aware, you've got the chief, the deputy, and the administrative assistant up there, and then on the top line, over to the right, Lieutenant Williams is the day officer, as they call them, the fire prevention inspector. Everybody else on that chart is working one of those 4 shifts. 2 of those shifts have 6 personnel, 2 have 7. Each shift is staffed with a company officer, that is a lieutenant or a captain. Right now, everybody's operating from fire headquarters, and the staffing that you have is dynamic. That is, when you come in the morning, you may get on a truck, but you may not stay on that truck all day long, right? Depending on the alarms that happen, the order in which they come in, personnel move back and forth, namely between the ladder company and the ambulance. And now that's an efficient way to use your staff, and that's a good thing. But as we go through, we'll talk about some of the challenges that you're beginning to face due to the level of activity that you've got. So this is just a high-level overview of the history of calls for service. We see there's an increase pretty much throughout. We went down a little bit from 2018 to 2019, and then again in 2019 to 2020. You'll see that's predominantly due to emergency medical services calls, and that's a phenomenon we're seeing across the country. There was a fall off in demand for ambulance calls in a lot of communities because of the COVID pandemic. Those tended to be what we would call low acuity or minor calls. People were thinking twice. They said, do I really want to go sit in the emergency room right now with this problem? Maybe not. And so we would expect that those ambulance numbers are going to come back up. It's a little too early to say, but we would expect that that trend toward a gradual increase is going to resume. Of the incident types there, as you can see, the number 3, rescue and emergency medical service incident, that's the ambulance calls. That's your dominant 73% of your calls for services over the last 5 years, which is not unusual given the fact that you're operating an advanced life support transport ambulance. And then you see these other various types of calls. The other thing to bear in mind on this, not to spend too much time on it, is that these are incidents that are classified after the call. So this is not what the fire department gets the phone call for. This is what was actually there. So you'll see that number fire, those are the actual fires, but many of those other calls that are in there could be, you know, I see smoke coming from a house, or I smell smoke, or, you know, all those things. So, you know, those good intent service and false alarms, you know, people ask sometimes, well, why do we send so many units to false alarms? I say, well, if they knew they were false alarms, they would send less units, but they don't when they first get them, right? So you have to go out and respond to them. This is just a map showing the density of incidents of all types over the 5 years of data. And you'll see the darkest spots are where you have the highest concentration of incidents. What this map is just trying to show is that your existing headquarters just down the block is actually pretty well located to service the historic areas of high demand. And you're seeing now up in the northeast area of demand, and that's one of the concerns. Obviously, that's one of the reasons we were brought in to look at that issue. So the study was titled Response Time Study, so we better talk about response times. Response times tend to be on the long side in the community, and they're getting longer over the data that we looked at, and that's a consistent pattern. Now there's a little bit of noise in there in the switch over to the Regional Communications Center, but nonetheless, the pattern is pretty strong. And so there's three reasons behind that. One is you've got some long runs to make from that headquarters station. You're servicing the entire town. So some of those, even if under ideal conditions, everybody's in the station ready to go, you've still got a 6-minute, 7-minute drive to get to the ends of the town. The second is you have an increase in overlapping calls. That is, you've got more than one incident active at the same time. And with your staffing of 6 to 7 people, remember you've got them split on 2 to 3 pieces of apparatus. If you get that second call, then you're in a position of having to split people off. The day staff, if they're around, will go out and cover it, or you have to call people in from outside to do that. So that's going to add time. In addition, personnel have to maybe move, go back to the station, get another piece of apparatus, and so those things slow you down. The number of, the percentage of calls that are overlapping has gone from 9% in 2016 up to 13.6% last year. And so that's increasing, so that's a real thing. And then, of course, we have an increase in calls in the north due to changing development patterns, the commercial development up there. And we do have detailed information in the report on that. There's a lot going on here, but the takeaway from this on the left is just a map. Those are the census block groups for the town, and the shading on there is tied to response times. And you see green is best, the dark green, light green, and then you get into the red. And you'll see the red, obviously, at the extreme northeast and the south is predominantly due to the driving distance you got to get there. But even if you look just south or southeast of the station, you'll see you've got a little bit of a higher times there, and it's that's attributable to the increasing demand for service. And so as we looked in the report, the times are tending to go up a little bit. If we look over at the right at that chart, we just see times broken out by incident type. You're generally in the high 4 or 5 minute responses to incidents on an average, which is not a bad thing, but keep in mind these are averages. And then there's a reference on here to NFPA 1710. I don't know if the members of the select board are familiar with that standard. Okay. Well, the NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. Started in Boston. They're now out in Quincy. But they have a standard which got a very long title for basically the delivery of services by career fire departments. And essentially, it is a staffing. It mandates time and attendance in terms of numbers of personnel, and it's an NFPA standard. Now, it has no legal binding authority. Some governmental jurisdictions will adopt it as a standard that they strive to meet, but it is a reference document. And so we did reference this in the report. NFPA 1710 requires a 4-minute essentially drive time to 90% of incidents. Now, 90% of incidents is very different from the average, and I don't want to get into a statistics lesson here. But basically, it's much more demanding. And so you are nowhere near meeting 1710, and even under the most optimistic scenarios that we have here, you won't be able to meet 1710. The good news is most communities, almost no communities of your size, could meet 1710. And so, but I wanted to make the aware of that because it is a widely referenced standard. So, with regard to station locations, we evaluated 5 scenarios, some of them involving one station and some of them involving 2. We started off looking at the current headquarters at 260 Union Street, just down the road. We also looked at the Lincoln School, which is, I guess, a site that would potentially be reused. A one-station scenario down at 160 Market Street, and then two station scenarios, one of the current headquarters and Blasdell Park, and the second at 160 Market and Blasdell Park. Now, the little asterisk on there, the little A, for our modeling purposes, the Lincoln School and the headquarters are essentially equivalent. I went into a study where we got all turned around because it was just like the 3 blocks. They're the same. They're within the levels of, our measurement. They're as close as they can be. So what we did, and I won't dwell on these, is we looked at 4-minute and 5-minute drive times from the facilities. Now, one thing to qualify, when we're talking about drive times, that is just the segment of time you close the door, you put your foot on the gas, hopefully the garage door is open, you drive out, and how far can you go in 4 minutes, okay? That doesn't include turnout time, which is the time from when the bell hits to when you get on the truck. It doesn't include call processing time, which is the time from when you call 911 or you pull the hook on the fire alarm to when that alarm goes to the fire department. So there are other components of the time. So it's not the total time. If you're standing there watching, calling in the fire department, you got your stopwatch, you've got other things you have to go through before you get to drive time. We look at drive time in these maps because that's the part that's under your control, right? You have the ability to manipulate the location of the station to minimize or to maximize coverage with drive time. So that's your current 4-minute drive time from the existing headquarters. There's the Lincoln School. The only thing I would note, I guess I'm a little heavy on the trigger here, is that you can see in 4 minutes you're going outside of the town, right? Now some of that's just the nature of the shape of the town, but that's the reality. And so Lincoln School, pretty equivalent. 160 Market, again, you're looking there, and, okay. 2 buttons, shouldn't be that hard. I'll keep my hand off. Okay, 160 Market, pretty centrally located. And again, a lot of firms, this is all they'll give you, but we're going to go behind this. The 2 station scenarios, here's the current headquarters in Blasdell Park. What you're seeing there, and it doesn't quite come through in the projection as well, but you can see it in the print version, there's a lot of overlap. Okay, overlap isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it means you can get more resources to a location, and if one station is out of service or busy, the other one can cover that area. However, if you look at the town, if you're down on the south end, it's like, well, what's that doing for me? That's great up there. And again, that Blasdell Park site, while it's well positioned to serve the growth or potential growth area up in the northeast and the north end of town, you'll see that a lot of its service area goes out beyond the town's boundary, even in the 4-minute. We also have 5-minute, and we do statistics for 6 in the report. This is the other scenario looking at 160 Market in Blasdell Park. And you see here there's much less overlap between the two, and you've got much better coverage of the town overall. But not just relying on the visuals, we use the GIS and your own data and census data to really evaluate these things pretty systematically, and we look along multiple dimensions. The first is the percent of the town land area covered, and there's arguments why each of these may be a preferred measure for a certain issue, which we won't get into right here. Percent of the population served from your 2018 American Community Survey data, and the population of the town is fairly stable in spite of development things going on. The percentage of the road network covered, which is the street network, so if you think of that as like if you got into an auto accident someplace, how far away would you be? The percentage of the street addresses covered, this talks about structures, so even if you had a big part of the town that was undeveloped, and there are no buildings there, well, this would capture that. And then your historic incidents, and so what any of these potential locations would do in terms of being able to cover your past record of events. And then just for completeness, we looked at inside and outside of the town coverage as well. So there's a lot on here, but this is kind of the star exhibit in terms of the station location scenarios. And the bottom line is that if you look at scenario 5, which is 160 Market Street in Blasdell Park, that gives you the best performance in terms of coverage of basically along every dimension. And that's not always the case, but here it's a pretty clear one because you're covering an area that isn't covered right now. If you look at the scenario above, scenario 4, the headquarters in Blasdell Park, keeping in mind that's either one, it's close, It gives you roughly 89% of incidents versus 96%, and so it's not terrible, but you do get an improvement. Now, of course, the decision you have to face is, I thought we were in for one new station, and now I've come to town to tell you, great news, you can do two. So, those are decisions that you have to make as a community. All right, so to summarize the station location recommendations, so your current headquarters, you've done a lot with it. It's still functional. You've got architects and engineering firm that's looked at that facility and made an assessment of it. From a lay perspective, there's 20 pounds of stuff in a 10-pound bag in that facility, but it's still, you can get the trucks in and out, and it's working. From a response time perspective, either the existing HQ or the Lincoln School sites are equivalent, as we said. We expect increasing activity in the northeast part of town. Over time, will increase demand, and because of that is an area of long response times that's going to start dragging up your numbers. A new station is a midterm solution, but current staffing is not adequate to support two stations. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. The ideal two-station configuration, obviously, would be the North Blasdell North Station and the Market Street, which would be most efficient from a response coverage perspective. Does that mean you have to do that? No, but that's the most efficient from a response coverage. The HQ in North would offer improvement, but has considerable overlap between the two stations. So, there were other administrative and policy recommendations in the report, and we just want to review those here quickly. One was just to accelerate entry of fire prevention data in the new records management system, and that, maybe you need to go hire somebody to go out and do that. Begin a pre-fire planning program using like the department's records management system. So this software has the capability so that members can go out and help around shift or with fire prevention, and they could record information from properties, where's the nearest hydrant, where is it sprinkler or not sprinkler, and there hazardous materials on site, those kinds of things which kind of now live in the minds of the members would be put out into that software so it could be pulled up in the field in real time. One of the concerns is that because of the level of activity, particularly when you have junior people on a shift, they tend to be assigned to the ambulance, and so they're very busy. And so they're not around like they used to be able to do all the training. And because of that, we think it's time to look at hiring people back and having designated training days in which a shift would come in on a day off to do training so that they could train as a group, train together, and get those requirements in to maintain proficiency. And that also has benefits with regard to the insurance rating of the fire department. Begin tracking and reporting response times, both as averages, as you do now, and at the 90th percentile level. And the 90th percentile, it just gives you an idea of kind of the outliers or the extreme measures or the extreme calls for service. And so it's a more robust measure than just looking at the average. And that also is better at capturing issues of long response times where you may have a situation where you have a recall and you have a 10 or 15 minute response time where the average, that's one call, but then the 90th percentile will be a little more apparent. That's inside baseball, just in terms of developing or individual unit designations for the CAD system. That's between the fire department and communications center to help better track unit activity. Start systematically tracking the recalls. That's the internally referred to as the box 33. Right now, that's basically kept on a paper record at the station, and there are some times when no one comes back on that recall, and if nobody comes back, I guess nobody fills out the piece of paper, and so we need to keep a good record of that because that's a very important statistic to track going forward to help determine the staff needs that you may have in the department. Track and analyze personnel attendance for each recall to monitor the effectiveness of recalls. Purchase software to enable real-time tracking and location reporting. And so, am I putting the pack to sleep here? Okay. I'll try to liven it up.
We could get Larry talking again.
So and there is software ready-made for that purpose. And this really is a worthwhile expenditure. There's a couple different companies that make it, but it really gives you the ability also for people to have an app on their phone, and when they're coming into the call, they push a button on their phone, and then the chief can see it, and then they know, okay, I've got 4 members coming back. Right now, they're kind of flying blind, and they get there when they get there, and they see what they get. So that is an important thing. I recommend adding an additional uniformed firefighter officer for administrative support to support training, fire prevention, and some of these other initiatives we talk about. And then for those 2 shifts that are at 6 personnel, bring them up to 7. So you've got 7 uniform staffing across the 4 shifts. Closing thoughts. So the bringing the all personnel up to 7 is not the panacea. That gets you on a base, but you will need additional resources in my estimation, particularly if you want to start operating 2 fire stations. The issue here is that we need to accumulate a little more data systematically with regard to the recalls, overlapping calls, and see what happens with the post-COVID as EMS demand picks back up again to help make those determinations for what you're going to be needing. The other wrinkle in this is the uncertain development forecast for the north end there, and so we don't really know how quickly that's going to happen and how quickly that demand is going to increase. According to the state's population forecasts, the town is not expected to increase population through 2040, which seems a little counterintuitive. Now, of course, you live here. Usually that's a case where there's lower household sizes, so the number of dwelling units stays the same, household size goes down, so it all balances out. That may not accurately reflect some of those developments in terms of multifamily that may be coming in. So, I would not put a great deal of stock in that, but that's where things right now, the official statistics are saying it's going to be fairly flat. As I said before, use this intervening time to accumulate definitive data on overtime, recall, response times to support a decision schedule. I throw out the potential to use daytime staff to get you through the period of highest demand. The department's not particularly enamored of that for reasons which we talk about in the report. And so the fire department, the town management, and the select board need to monitor response times and agree on the criteria for adding resources going forward. So that concludes the formal presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. A lot of information. Anybody on the board? Questions, comments?
So I get a question. So first off, thank you for the presentation. It certainly was informative, and you took us through, for lay people, that might took us through, well enough that at least I have a much greater understanding now than before.
Good, thank you.
One question I do have is, you're talking about going to a staffing of 7 across the board. You mentioned the second station. But if we go to a second station, 7 personnel is not going to be able to, it's going to take more than that to man the 2 stations, correct?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
So let me jump ahead of my contingency slide. So this is the and sometimes you feel like you want to have a clear slam dunk victory, but you basically with 7. The only way you could reasonably split them up, and some of this is not necessarily a right or wrong way, and the chief certainly has opinions on this, and he's the chief of this fire department, so his opinion should carry the day. As I like to say, I don't run anything. I write a report, and then 10 minutes after I get off the podium here, I'm headed out of town going 65 miles an hour. So you own this. And I want to always be respectful of that in terms of how you staff and deal with it. But even if you wanted to say, well, let's put 2 people at the station 2, and we'll let them, they could cover an ambulance run, which is the most frequent response. If you put them on the first ambulance, then they're going to be out of service 25% of the time, roughly. And so that station essentially is not, there's nobody up there. So all the hoopla about helping out response times, that's gone. And then you've only got 5 people at headquarters. And then so how are you going to split them up between covering the second ambulance, the engine, and the ladder? And that doesn't leave you, it's not that effective. If you get a situation where they are split up, they can't come back, they can't pool the resources. So that's an issue with the two. And then, so what we did on this chart, and it's also in the report, is we look at different options, and these are just what ifs if you went to 8, 9, and 10, and the way you could staff that. Now, in terms of the second station, I would say most fire chiefs, I think that Chief Duffy included, would say he'd want 3 people, and he actually, I shouldn't speak for the chief. The chief would probably prefer to have 3, because that would give you nominal staffing for a fire company, or they could flip over and staff the ambulance as well, and the engine could tag along or do whatever they wanted to do. 4 would give you the ability to staff the ambulance and have a credible 2-person crew on the engine to be able to provide service. And so really that you're looking at 2, 3, or 4 up at that second station for it to be really effective. 2 I don't think is ideal. You're kind of covering it, but it's not, I don't think anybody would say it's optimal. And I don't know if the chief wants to say anything about that at this point.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it would be, for the investment into a second station, it doesn't seem like we'd get much of a benefit at all, because
Yes.
you might have a couple of calls with reduced response time, but that's probably about it.
And I came from a department, so I started my career in Norwell, and we had a station at one end of town that was staffed by 2 personnel. The minute we were on the ambulance providing the service, that end of town, there was an increased response from the other station. So, yeah, you definitely lose that protection.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I'd say on that. I mean, we're certainly happy to continue if there are other questions.
Anybody else have any other questions?
So can I make one point to that last comment Rich had? I think ideally what the chief would want to see, if the resources were available, would be a second station and more personnel,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, no,
we want it
So
all.
I'm just saying it out loud.
We'll just take it all.
Yeah, we know.
understand that.
That really doesn't make any sense to build a station and put 3 people in it. I mean, it can work, but I mean, you need more people. And I just don't, meet at Central and at the ancillary station if there is one.
And that's where we come to the crux of the issue, is we need both. We need personnel and we need, facilities.
Facilities.
So I think, the big question before us now is, do we build a headquarters station and staff it up to what we can with, at this time, 7, and look at personnel in the future, and then look to see what happens in the future with development down that northeast end of town, and rely on developers to, potentially build a station for us if we could do that, or, we have to figure out what our needs are. And I think our needs right now are a station and to increase personnel slightly, bring us up to at least minimal 7. We could always use 8 to 9 to 10 currently, and
Because
still
half
be
of your group
busy.
right now is at 6, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So, we're leaning more towards a new headquarters with slightly increased staffing would cover us for today. And then, we'd have to have a plan for, the near future.
But even if that's the case, the plan, and unfortunately so many times because of economic situations or the situation that are at hand, you may not always make the best long-term choice, because sometimes it may not be available. But, this, at least to me, this report certainly kind of opened it up that, something on that Market Street corridor and then in the northeast, covers 90% of the town. And, in the area of town that if we are going to have growth, it's going to be in that area, between Southfield and, yeah. Yep.
So I had I guess a couple of questions. in a comment. You know, one, I was surprised to see that 160 Market Street was the worst of the options, for whatever reason. Well, as far as from like a response time, as far as the percentage of calls that it would meet, I think it hit like 73%.
No, it was the best. That was the best.
Just the 160 Market Street as its own, by itself. I was surprised at that because I think I always felt like that was a central quick shot down 123. And
I think it pulls it too far away.
That's why I was kind of surprised at that. So I think for a long time we operated with the thought was that maybe that's a great spot for a location because it could go both ends of town, and clearly that's not the case. You know, obviously I know the study focused on drive time. Scott, can you talk a little bit about turnout time? How is that in comparison as a study? Did you guys find any issues with turnout time?
So we didn't study turnout time within the study. And really turnout time is something that wasn't officially tracked. I mean, now that we have Holbrook, you know, we have better times of when the call is, when the station's alerted, when the trucks leave the station. Those calls are a little bit more. I will say is that we will meet or exceed, you know, be under those required times that, you know, that the standards have. You know, just the personnel at the station, they're ready to go. They're willing to go. And there's no, no pushing them, trying to get them up and motivated. They're already motivated.
And yeah, from our observations, they're a pretty with it group. I've been in places where people kind of,
drag their feet.
a little slower getting out but they're on it.
That's good to hear. And then, Scott, just your overall analysis of this study. Anything that surprised you in this case study? Anything that?
No, I think a lot of the things that that Dr. Jennings has highlighted here. I think we're on the way to already having a lot. Like we could already have many of these things done. Pre-fire planning he mentioned. We already have that in paper form. So now it's just a matter of getting into the computer system. We just got a grant for computers to put into the vehicles. So that was another huge hurdle. So I mean we're on the way. There was nothing shocking that I didn't know. It was just good confirmation and backup for to bring to
for the stuff that you guys have been doing already. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Larry, I see.
How much are the ambulance receipts you're bringing in now a year?
So last year, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's probably around 1.2 million is what we brought in with the ambulance receipts.
Yeah, it's been.
And that just goes, I know what it does. It just goes back into the general fund. It doesn't really go back to the fire department to use. But I think it's a good starting point to say that, each year the fire department increases a certain percentage with its ambulance receipts, and maybe a long-term plan would to be take a percentage of whatever comes in and reallocate it toward the extra things, equipment, engines or whatever.
Always, each year in my tenure as chief for the past 10 years, every time I'm in front of the finance committee, I always leave with, even if I had 25% of the ambulance receipts, I would have a capital plan, and I wouldn't need to come to, the town voters or to the finance committee for, a fire truck or, cardiac monitors, new turnout gear. This is something that would already be in a plan. Now, the ambulance receipts go into the general fund. But we also get our salaries and our funding through the general fund. So yeah, the funds do come back to the fire station, to the department, just not how we wish they would. We would love to get them back, over and above.
Have your budget in 25%.
Exactly.
I remember those conversations.
Of course, yeah, you were on the board. So.
And our town accounting is back there right now.
But no, they do come back and. But yeah, each year they are increasing. Now our numbers, our calls are increasing yearly. So
if I remember, that's actually how we actually got 2 of the shifts to 7. Was running that second ambulance and increased. I remember working about that on how we could do that.
Correct.
Mike, can I make a point?
You sure can.
I just wanted to highlight, because you were talking about the Market Street location, which I still think of as the Rite Aid, as a Dollar Tree now. The chief and I worked pretty hard to try to get some interest from the owners, because I want to highlight, that's the only site that we don't own. You know, we own the current station, we own Lincoln Park, and we own the northeastern area that we're Blaisdell
Right,
Park.
Blaisdell, and that's VFW cutoff, right? Just for
Right,
people
that's that
in town.
cutoff, but it's town owns it.
Yeah.
But we don't own that mark, so the best, I think the most realistic option that we could strive to achieve would be a two-station solution with more personnel. But it would be at that Market Street site that we don't own. So that's in addition to the hurdle of constructing a building and hiring new staff, we don't own that site. So I wanted to highlight that. And then just the other point too, I wanted to make is, you know, the chief, as he just said earlier, he needs a new building. I mean, the building is just not big enough. I mean, there's just not enough parking. You could go on and on. He could spend a lot of time talking about the deficiencies of it. And the problem we have, of course, is we have a bunch of other capital needs as well. We have sewer needs. We have a community center. So we're going to need to do some work collectively to really start prioritizing, because I know I don't, and the chief doesn't want to kick this can down the road any longer. Like, we're going to have to really come up with a prioritized plan on how we're going to attack this, because the status quo, I don't think, is going to work for too much longer. I mean, he literally has to special order ladder trucks and other vehicles that are smaller so they fit in the apparatus bay, because the standard ones won't. So I just wanted to highlight that as well.
And we have some upcoming maintenance at the fire station, and it's just a matter of how much money you put, you know, good into bad. And it's not bad, it just, you know.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal to
Yeah,
continually
are we gonna get the return on the investment?
invest or divest at this point. And that's been the case for 10 years anyways. We've been having this conversation. I mean, we've talked about this, and you know, I thought we'd have a fire station by now before some of the other projects that were completed. So, so Dr. Jennings, I appreciate your time. This is great information. I won't hold you up any longer, so you can start
Get on the road,
meeting,
hit 65
meeting of our town.
Not in the town
Yeah,
limits.
all right. Because there'll be another chief outside to wait for you.
There you go.
I
just have one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
So, what are your thoughts on a public safety building, combining police and fire together?
I don't have enough information to evaluate on
Okay.
that. I mean, that's really, you know, if you could, well, it introduces issues with siting in terms of the footprint you've got. But, you know, I mean.
I just didn't know if you had any background in that, if you
Well, I
favored
mean,
it one way or
the
the other.
driving thing with public safety, I'll tell you everything about public safety buildings, which is not much. So if you have 15 seconds. Basically, the driver on location is the fire department. If it's an operational fire station, that should determine where the thing is sited. And then secondarily, convenience to, you know, bus routes and people coming in and making reports and all that kind of, paying tickets, all those things. But anyway, there it is. I'm out,
Yeah.
so.
No, I've just seen a few other local communities do it, so I just didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, you know.
You keep pointing at me, I don't know the answer to that one. Oh, you're looking at that, okay.
They tend to be expensive.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know what I never looked at the police headquarters, so.
Yeah, I mean, the fire is obviously in more dire need of a
Yeah.
new station.
But I
it's
mean,
just
yeah, maybe.
another thought I
it
had in
could
the back
work,
of my
but
mind.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's, you know, something that could be looked at. And just for the select board's benefit, you know, our company, we stand behind the study, and so, you know, 2 years from now, if you have a question, you know, feel free to call us up, and I occasionally, you know, get them, and sometimes it's like, it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't, you know, vouch for, you know, the findings. We have to go back in and refresh some things, but clearly, if you have any things, we're happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chief. And we're losing Pac-12. That's it. Thank you, guys.
See you later,
Appreciate it.
Guys, thank you.
Glad you stayed awake.
Yep.
See you guys.
All right, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
Have none.
Okay, number 5, old business. Town clerk, 2020 re-precincting plan. Miss Landy. 2 meetings in a row.
I know, I
How
know.
are you?
This is
I
great.
promise I'll be brief. I know that the Sox game on.
Is it? Really?
The guy from New York is laughing.
Sorry for the late
Thank you.
submission on this, but I just received it from, did somebody get to?
Yeah, I get you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys for having me again. I spoke to Doug last week, and I said, could I just be put on the agenda, just in case that there were any last-minute edits. And I would like to recap what re-precincting is. Due to the 2020 census, all the towns are required to re-precinct based on population. We can't have more than 4,000 voters in any given precinct. And the paperwork that I just gave you, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Rob Rosa. The state gave me a computer-generated precinct outline, and the delay was, he literally had to go through each and every precinct and rewrote the boundary lines because the computer-generated one was inadequate, so that was my fear that there'd be some kind of glitch, so I asked to come back today. So I'm fortunate to tell you that I received a map in the mail this morning, and very minor edits, so I don't think that I'll have a lot of residents to contact to tell them that their precincts are changed, which is great news for us. But the only thing is the census that is going out in January may not reflect the precinct change. So because of all the communities, 351, changing, they don't know if they'll get the state information updated by the census information. Right. So that's the only downside that I can see, is that the census will come, that'll say that they were in whatever precinct, and then I'll have to submit a letter indicating that their precinct is now changed. It is going to take place January 1st, and then the census are going out, so it's out of my control.
But overall, it's a small percentage of households that,
It's actually one little chunk, very small percentage. Actually, he called it one little, what was the word he used? Hold on, I have notes. One block.
okay.
It's very, very small, which I'm pleased. Initially, it was going to be much larger, so it's going to be very small people affected, so I'm really relieved. So not as much confusion will be happening.
Which zone is changing?
I believe it's 5, Custer Street area. So that's it. I know you guys voted on it, and I need that vote to submit to the state. So the vote that you will sign off on, and this paperwork that Rob has given me where he re-precincting everything, and I'll be good to go.
Remind me, did they vote last time or did they wait?
I asked if I could come back, and you were like, well, why don't we vote now? So they did vote
Did
last
they?
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
He signed something today.
And then
Okay.
Susan
I forgot.
drafted up
Okay.
the vote for me this
All right,
morning.
good.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments for Liza? I know how much she enjoys presenting, so.
Thank you, Liza.
Doing a great,
Thank you.
doing a great job,
Good work.
Liza. Doing a real fine job.
Thank you much.
We'll see you at the next meeting. Like that.
Can't wait.
We should add that to every agenda, the clerk's corner.
Right?
There you go.
All right, next on the agenda, other old business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I have none.
Number 6, town administrator's report and correspondence. Doug?
All right, it's 7:57. I'll keep this to 3 minutes or less. Just 4 quick items. The first is, as the board addressed earlier, the town is renewing its electricity energy aggregation program. Just this afternoon, we posted a press release on the town website, just the first step in beginning to notify residents about the change. It's going to be really simple. Everybody that's in it, they won't have to do anything. But there'll be a lot more information coming out for community relations, but I just wanted to highlight that the press release is on the homepage of the website, more info coming soon. The next item is our IT director, Eugene Gingras, has been doing a lot of work helping the town with cybersecurity. And one piece of that involves working with the state and doing a lot of training with staff and town employees to make sure that we're not accidentally, clicking on a phishing email or anything like that. So I was happy to receive an email note from a state agency. I forgot. Oh, here it is. It's the EOTSS, so I forgot exactly what that acronym stands for, but we are being formally designated as a cyber-aware community by the state because we've taken actions that are, important to improve our cybersecurity. So I just wanted to highlight that that's a really good thing, and I want to thank our IT director, Gino, for his efforts in that, and we'll keep working on it. In addition to that kind of training, there's other hardware issues as well, which I won't get into publicly. Next, also relating to IT, our online permitting efforts that our IT director, Gino, has been leading up through a state grant. We're getting close to the finish line within the next month or two. We're going to see the online permitting go live. We'll be starting with the building department for building permits, also dog licenses in the clerk's office, and then expanding into some other departments. I'll ask Gino to come in and do an actual brief demo so you guys can see it. And I know, Mike, you were pushing for this a long time ago, and I think you'll be really happy to see the end result. So we're closing in on the final phase of that. And if you're ever downstairs by the building department, you'll see a computer attached to the wall. That's for if a customer comes up, they can enter things directly, and it just cuts out that whole paper input process. And then lastly, on the McCarthy farm, we're working on all those next steps. We did send formal notice to the landowners that we're exercising our option, and we've sent them a draft purchase and sales agreement, and that's been sent to the registry to get recorded. I think one of the owners is out of the country for a brief period of time, so as soon as they're back, it'll be fully executed.
Do you have a timeline? You have a timeline on when we might close on it?
Not yet, but I will soon. Probably by your next meeting, I will. And I've reached out to a engineering firm to do the right kind of environmental analysis to make sure we do our due diligence on the property, and there isn't something there that would make us want to change course. So we're just working through, and obviously also making sure we're checking all the boxes with the state so that we make sure we get our reimbursement. I have a training session with them on Zoom about that tomorrow. So just a lot of work going on behind the scenes to finish off that project. That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Mr. Penny.
I'm going to keep it brief to get to the Sox game. Fall Festival was absolutely phenomenal. To Gene Blaney and the group, there's so many people to thank, but an absolutely tremendous turnout, from toddlers to,
Older
every
people.
every age group. And it was just phenomenal, and so many people had a good time, and I hope that we're able to continue doing that in other events, because it really brought the community together. So that was it.
Thank you, Rich. Selectman Needham.
I share the same. It was a great day. Thanks to Jean Blaney, Allison Phipps, Reimagine Rockland, and all of the people that volunteered, contributed. It was so inspiring to see Chief Duffy, the fire department, amazing open house, amazing showcase of what you do. The police were in full force. Just everybody was there. Everybody was happy, all ages. It was a great day, and it was nice to see Union Street come alive with joy. It was pure joy. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Selectman Needham. Selectman Ryan.
Yeah, the Autumn Festival was very well done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your part in helping organize the whole thing. On a sad note, I just want to say to the family of Randy Ralston, our former clerk, she passed away recently, and her funeral and everything was the other day, and she'll be missed. And the family of Bob Condon, a longtime football coach with the young guys in our day, and Eric Reese, another good guy who we're friends with here, and we have a lot of friends who are related to him in town, and they'll all be missed. They all passed away recently, and everybody comes and goes, but it's never a happy day when they do. Other than that, life is good. I'm all set.
Thank you, Selectman Ryan. Vice Chairman Nyman.
My colleagues summed up everything I was going to add tonight, but just job well done to everyone involved with the Fall Fest. It was really an amazing turnout. It was great to see everybody, and my condolences to Randy Ralston's family as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Kara. So I really don't have much to say that wasn't already covered. The Fall Fest was great. I thought it was a great event for the town. I think numbers were estimated to be about 6,000 or 7,000 people, and every time you can bring that amount of people to the center of town, and you have no arrests, and everybody, even with the adult beverages being served. I know. Well, you were there too. Wow. Now, so totally derailed. Totally derailed. I'm probably 50 shades of red right now. But I think it was a great day, and I've talked to some of the leaders of that group already. We want to try to do something like that again in the spring and do a spring fest, and maybe around Cinco de Mayo, and Gary can have a margarita truck up there or something like that. But we'll see. Anytime, like I said, anytime we can get together, and it's nice to do something like that, especially coming off the year that we just had, the last year and a half, and everybody was so well behaved, and everybody was happy, to Larry's point, and everybody was just having a good time. So with that, that group, that Gene and Allison, Reimagine Rockland, everybody's been working great on this stuff, and I'm really excited to see what they put together next. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, roll call. Selectman Ryan?
Yes.
Selectman Penny?
Yes.
Selectman Needham?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
See you at the rail trail cleanup.